Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 6th of June 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, the Dishwasher Vampire has been unofficially ported to PC. The developer is not particularly happy about it. Xbox One DRM has a lot of advantages, claims Microsoft. New Deus Ex game revealed, and definitely not what you were hoping for. OMGPOP has been closed down by Zynga, although they're not too unhappy about it, and free-to-play shooter Warframe will be coming to PlayStation 4 on launch. All this and the OC Remix track of the day are coming your way right about now. The Dishwasher Vampire Smile has been a 360 exclusive since 2011. It was a game released by Scar Studios, and it was very well received on the platform. Scar Studios have now moved on to work on Charlie Murder, a game that I did cover. Wow, that must have actually been 2 PAXs ago now, and still hasn't released, but it was, by the looks of it, a pretty damn enjoyable brawler with an interesting art style. However, the Dishwasher Vampire Smile has now been unofficially ported to the PC and has popped up on Russian torrent sites as a direct result. Now, not only is this interesting because it's an unofficial port of an Xbox game, which is extremely rare, in fact I've never heard of that ever happening before, but it's also a situation where Scar Studios did certainly not authorize it, and the developer responsible for porting the game actually made a statement that claimed that he was morally right to do so. The statement from him reads as follows, and of course this is a translation from Russian, so do bear in mind there may be a couple of oddities. The ethics of publication. The viewers expressed that, with respect to the authors, it is not very nice to publish the game on PC. I have to argue that the part of the authors are not very nice to publish the game exclusively for the Xbox 360, making it impossible for PC gamers to play such a great game. On the subject of piracy, he says, piracy, yes, that is bad. On the other hand, we did not steal the game from the Xbox 360, we released it for the PC port. Given that the developers ignored the PC platform, about any loss of profit for them is not out of the question. After all, if they wanted to earn money, then the game would be issued on all available platforms. If the game came out on PC officially, then this thread would not exist. Since then, James of Scar Studios has actually responded by saying, I guess you could say my reaction is mixed. I'm flattered that there's this much interest in Vampire Smile on PC. I'm not mad about the crack itself. In fact, I'm actually pretty impressed. But I'm bewildered by the cracker's attempt to justify the morality of it. He assumes a lot about why Vampire Smile is not on PC, and yet he could have cleared up a lot of those assumptions by just emailing me. I get the piracy as a service problem, but that's a consequence and not a justification. He also went on to say that the reason that Vampire Smile was not out on PC yet, aside from the obvious point that it's a tiny indie studio and they don't have the resources to port it yet, he said that he actually did desire to release the game for PC and wanted to release a director's cut version with all sorts of different options and actually designed specifically for PC. After they finished Vampire Smile, they immediately started work on Charlie Murder, so they certainly did not have time whatsoever in order to do that. The developer of the port also responded on the site indiestatic.com, claiming he did not know who James Silver actually was, so I don't think he's really in any position to lecture on the subject of morality when he didn't even bother to learn who made the game to begin with. I don't think you, as someone who unofficially ports a game and enables mass piracy of it, is in any position to be lecturing on the subject of morals. He also made the comment that it was a restoration of justice rather than piracy. Wow. Oh, yeah. Okay, this guy is out of his bloody mind. A restoration of justice, my ass. Alright, I'm primarily a PC gamer, as you're well aware, and yes, I'm not very happy when games don't come to PC. I would like to play Dishwasher Vampire Smile, because I know it's a very good game. However, what I wouldn't do is take the game without paying for it. This is what really annoys me about this whole thing and the idea that you can justify it. Just because it's not available on the platform that you specifically want it on doesn't mean that you have the right to take it for free. That's nonsensical. Because it shuts down the possibility of really making a decent amount of money on it if they do eventually have the resources to port it over. And more to the point, it's the developer's choice to do that. And in fact, it's their right and privilege to do that. It's not your right and privilege to say, alright, okay, I'm just going to take it and then I'm going to run it on PC now. No, that's just flat out piracy. You don't get to talk about the restoration of justice. What justice? It's a $10 indie game. What justice is being done here? Yes, it would be nice to play it. Is it nice to port the game without the developer's permission and enable mass piracy of the product, which could essentially sink any possibility of there being a real PC port, because everyone already bloody owns the thing? I'm sorry, but as impressive as it is that someone actually managed to do this, and actually very worrying as well, because if this has got something to do with XNA, I don't know how all of this works, but I would assume that XNA was involved in this. That could lead to a mass cracking of other titles, which is only going to hurt one group of people, and that's indie devs. You really want to screw over indie developers? I mean, seriously. This is ridiculous. If this person had really been interested in so-called justice, then they would have gone to the dev in the first place. And as I just pointed out, the argument of, oh, they're not losing anything because it's not on the platform to begin with, completely does not hold water. You need to have a very minute understanding of business to really believe that that's the case. Microsoft continues to stick its foot in its mouth, with Studio Corporate Vice President Phil Spencer talking to Edge magazine on the subject of DRM. He was asked for his opinion on the used game market, however, of course, he was wearing his talisman of evasion and said, I think the whole idea of a secondary market is important, and it'll be important to the next generation, and we've designed with that in mind from the beginning. Which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He then went on to talk about DRM specifically and said, I think there are a lot of advantages of having your content assigned to you digitally. We did that on 360 with cloud-saved games. We want to do that with content. We understand there are implications. Just know that we recognize the importance of that market, and we've designed with it in mind from the beginning. Cloud-saved games on Xbox is possibly the most pointless feature I've ever heard of. It's also available on PlayStation as well, and I have yet to find a use for it. I think it must be that I just don't live in a world where people take their games over to other people's houses and require their saved files. I can't think of all that many games that really require that. I can definitely see the usefulness of it. It's like, hey, come play my new game, so on and so forth. Bringing over your own saved file, especially when you want to let your friends play on it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I never wanted to let my friends play my saved file. They'd always have their own saved file, in which case cloud saving wouldn't really be all that useful. It's not like you can take your game somewhere else and it's like, oh, great, we get to the hotel room and there's an Xbox 360 there. How convenient. It's like, that never happens. So I don't even know what's going on there. And of course, if you want to take your Xbox somewhere, it's got the saves on the bloody thing to begin with. I've started to find cloud saves useful because I now have a gaming tablet. I have a Razer Edge, which means that cloud saving is really handy because it automatically syncs my save files with my Razer Edge. So if I'm playing on PC and then I go to bed, I just want to play a little bit more or whatever, then it will have synced my saved file up. That's useful. But in this case, when you don't actually have a companion mobile device to go along with it, it doesn't really have any use whatsoever, and it's definitely not a justification for DRM. Oh, you can get cloud saves. I'm pretty sure 99.9% of people would trade no BS DRM for that. And the stupid thing about it is that it doesn't even justify the constant internet connection required. And yes, it is the once every 24 hours thing. It's not always on, as it were. So if there is an interruption in the service, then it shouldn't cause a problem, which is good, don't get me wrong. But it's still phoning home every 24 hours from what we know. And if it isn't able to do that, then that's going to cause you a lot of problems accessing your content. And here's the point, right? We did it with 360 with cloud-saved games. Okay, great. You know what the 360 didn't require? Cloud-saved games and an always-on internet connection. It didn't need either of those things, and yet it worked perfectly well. The idea of saying, hey, cloud-saved games is an advantage is not a justification. I can do cloud-saved games on anything, and they don't have to be always online. It's really, really strange. It's like, I don't know. I expect that a lot of this information will come out at E3. Microsoft refuses to talk about used games. There's a lot of dodging going on right here, and it really brings me to this point where they're going to try and convince people, and they have been doing this for months, by the way, that this internet connection thing is a good idea. And it sounds great until, of course, it goes horribly wrong. Now, the whole phoning home thing is by no means as bad as an always-on internet connection. Don't get me wrong. I'm much, much happier with that than I would be with always on. But I can definitely perceive an awful lot of problems, and it really depends on what exactly that's used to do. I'm online a lot. For me, if my PC had to phone home once every 24 hours, I can't perceive that being a problem. If one of my mobile devices had to, then that might be an issue. But my PC, no. I can't foresee a period where I have 24 hours without an internet connection. but what is it going to be used for, and will the advantages actually outweigh the disadvantages of that kind of DRM? Will it be used to restrict content further, or will it be used to give access to more interesting things? That, I believe, we'll have to wait and see. The new Deus Ex game has been announced. Deus Ex The Fall is on iOS. Yes, it's on iOS. Square Enix continues their history of being one of the most disliked publishers on iOS, considering that they have, for several years now, actually completely and totally botched up the mobile release of pretty much everything they put on the platform, including extremely expensive versions of Final Fantasy being the most expensive upfront cost games on the entire App Store, and numerous releases like Final Fantasy All the Bravest, which was in fact an absolute complete and total train wreck of a monetized fanboy milking cornucopia of in-app purchases. Now along comes Eidos Montreal with a title they've apparently been working on for a year now by the name of Deus Ex The Fall, which will continue on from the story of the novel Icarus and will be an iOS exclusive. What is worse, it would appear to be a dumbed-down version of Deus Ex using touchscreen controls. It is still a third- and first-person shooter, however, it contains an awful lot of contrivances and, of course, compromises to make it work on an iOS device, which include, of course, weaker graphics, more linear story, less exploration, dumbed-down combat, dumbed-down bloody everything by the looks of it. Now, if this were just a spin-off, then I think that people would be okay with it. However, this was very much hyped. It's kind of about the time when a new Deus Ex game should have been announced. It came out in 2011, so it's been a reasonable amount of time now. And unfortunately, it seems like this was a gigantic waste of our time. To me, as someone that loves Deus Ex, everybody knows it's my favorite game of all time. This is, of course, a massive disappointment to me, and I'm disappointed on behalf of the people that don't have iOS devices. For one thing, I do. I can play the game, but it is primarily a PC franchise, and obviously consoles have been getting into it with Deus Ex Human Revolution, and maybe they played The Conspiracy, which was a pretty terrible version of the game, but hey. And now they're saying, well, you know what? We know that you like this series, and we know that it's highly story-driven, so we're going to take that story and we're going to put it in a device that most of you don't own, and a device that most of you have no interest in owning because that device is really bad for core gamers, and it is. You know, I own one of those things. The stuff that I play on it generally involves fighting fantasy game books, occasional board games, and pinball. Those are the game genres that work pretty well on there for core gamers. Outside of that, if you try and adapt third-person or first-person shooters to that platform, they generally end up being dreadful because it doesn't have any physical controls. And it looks like Deus Ex will be of no possible exception there. And I gotta say, some of the quotes from that video are extremely disturbing. You can listen to it and you'll see, it was really important to us to make the game as simple to play as possible. When has Deus Ex ever been about simplicity? It's been about emergent gameplay, exploration, and a good set of mechanics that actually give real depth to the game. It's about choice. It's about finding things that weren't meant to be found. It's about those crazy emergent moments that come out of it. And you aren't going to have that on iOS. It's just frankly not possible. If they had to even cut down something as simple as XCOM for the actual platform itself, reducing the number of maps and, of course, significantly lowering the texture quality of pretty much everything, then I very much doubt that you're going to be able to properly put a Deus Ex game on iOS. It's really, really damn irritating to see that. And, of course, what really annoys me is that dumbing down. Why would anyone want the next part of the Deus Ex franchise to be on iOS? Some people would draw comparisons to something like Kingdom Hearts, which has jumped around platforms quite a bit, but it's always jumped around gaming-specific platforms, yeah? Actual core game devices. And you even go back to Metal Gear, for instance. Started on Nintendo systems, then Metal Gear Solid, which was barely even Metal Gear to begin with. I mean, that was really a complete reimagining of what Metal Gear originally was. That ended up on PlayStation, and then it kind of stuck on PlayStation for the longest time, and occasionally you'll get that generational gap where it'll leap to the next gen of platform. But what you generally don't see is hardcore core game franchise, originally PC, moved to console, okay, cool, still had a PC version, very good PC version. Oh yeah, we're going to put the next game on iOS, and it's going to actually have some story significance. If this is just a spin-off, then they've done an incredibly lousy job of communicating that. Everything that I see from this is, oh, hey, look, we're going to reuse a bunch of assets, but this is a brand new story and something that's actually pretty important. It's not a companion app, it's not like Mass Effect Infiltrator, which was actually rubbish, by the way, as well. It's a farce, an incredibly stupid thing to do. The fact that a team over at Eidos Montreal has been wasting time doing this rather than working on a real Deus Ex game disturbs me greatly. Is Deus Ex going to end up being like Windows, where only the odd-numbered versions are any good? That's a possibility. It really, really is. 2 and, if you want to call Fall 4, are most likely going to be absolutely dreadful, whereas 1 and 3, of course, were the shining examples of the series. Oh, Jesus. It hurts, man. It hurts. I love Deus Ex so much. I try my best not to be a fanboy of anything, because this is what happens when you get too attached to a franchise. You just set yourself up for disappointment every time. Don't be a fan of anything, guys. Seriously, you'll live a happier life if you aren't. Zynga has closed down OMGPOP, the developers of Draw Something, a company that they actually acquired for $180 million at the height of Draw Something's popularity. However, it turned out that Draw Something was not, in fact, the next big thing, and the popularity of the game rapidly imploded. Most likely had something to do with the acquisition by Zynga, who are not exactly known as a particularly good publisher. The game lost 4 million players within a month of the Zynga buyout, and the studio has now closed its doors. And this comes along with news that Zynga shut down branches in Austin, as well as Los Angeles and Dallas, with 520 people losing their jobs, which sounds like a very, very bad thing indeed. Curiously enough, news has come out that OMGPOP employees were rather happy at this particular decision. A staff member told Business Insider, "Most layoffs are sad. You imagine big corporate settings where security is there to lead people out of the office so they don't make a scene. This was the opposite. Music was being played loudly and people were ripping up Zynga hoodies and t-shirts." So that's a pretty crazy thing indeed. Zynga hasn't explained anything about the closing of their offices, other than, of course, the fact that they're probably losing a ton of money. There are no hard facts, said the insider. No real explanation, just typical corporate BS. Everyone was just like, yep, not surprised at all. It was like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders, that a decision had finally been made. Well, best of luck to the OMGPOP guys, and hopefully they'll get picked up by a publisher or a company that isn't wholly and totally evil. Admittedly, it's not like OMGPOP has actually developed anything remotely original. Half of their games seem to be just straight rip-offs of others, even before Zynga actually came along. But we will see. You know, have no doubt there are some talented people in that development team, and hopefully they land on their feet. And finally, it's been announced that Digital Extreme's free-to-play shooter Warframe will be making its debut on PlayStation 4 as a launch title. This free-to-play co-op game has been available in open beta on PC for quite some time and is continuing to have a rather large slew of features added to it over the course of a number of months. However, it would appear that the Digital Extreme guys were approached by Sony, and Sony really wanted them on board with the launch of the PlayStation 4, and it would appear that Digital Extremes was more than happy to do that. They claim that the company retains control of the game and don't have to necessarily get into bed with the publisher and sell away their ideas, although it would appear that for the time being, for a console release, Warframe will be a PlayStation 4 exclusive. Steve Sinclair from Digital Extreme says that Sony's attitude and their support and their willingness to work with us to get us on console is an incredible opportunity for a studio like us. He continues by saying that Sony has been incredibly supportive and available. He also went on to describe the PlayStation 4 as incredible to develop for, saying that he didn't want to speak disparagingly about our existing or prior platforms, but we showed Warframe for the first time to our entire studio, and everyone had their jaws on the floor, how 1080p, silky smooth and beautiful it was, so they're really enjoying working on the machine. As it stands, it doesn't look like there will be any cross-compatibility with the title, but it would appear that content will be developed simultaneously for both the PC and the PlayStation 4 platform. So this is pretty good news, I think, as far as I'm concerned. Warframe is actually a really fun game. I enjoy it a lot. It's great on PC. It's probably the best PvE experience you're going to find. A lot of these games end up being competitive. Warframe is really anything but that. It's very much focused on PvE mission-based content, and it's a lot of fun. It's very well put together. It's very sleek, very smooth, very well polished. Seems like a great game to put onto PlayStation 4 as a release title, so I wish them all the best with that. And it's also interesting because it would appear that if they're able to regularly update content, then it may be that the certification process and the charges that were put in place for updating content on consoles may be changing in the next generation. I'm intrigued to see where that goes, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Alright folks, that is me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. As we mourn the death of Deus Ex, let's play a title from the Deus Ex Remix album. There are some great tracks on this album, I've got to say, and you should really check it out. It's called Sonic Augmentation. This is a shorter remix from the album from DJ Mokram and Dusk, and this integrates some elements from Human Revolution. The tracks involved in this medley are Return to Hengsha, and Away We Go, Detroit City Ambient, and the opening credits, along with Everybody Lies, Icarus, Unatco, and the main title theme. All squeezed into 2 minutes 57 seconds. It's called Adapt, Evolve, Survive. Enjoy, and I will see you next time.